Hello and welcome. My name is Scott Suskovic. I'm pastor at Christ Lutheran Church, and welcome to this podcast that we call Deeper Dive, in which we take a look at the previous Sunday's sermon and go at a deeper level for a great conversation. We're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us here for this next edition of Deeper Dive. Well, Pastor Ryan, I was up on Sunday to bat here for preaching, and I hit a couple of different topics. We certainly talked a lot about the suppression of memory with PTSD, with child abuse and other traumatic. Wasn't that a powerful testimony?
Oh, man. And that's the kind of stuff that church should wade into. We should get into all of the different waters. And that's a mucky one that no one wants to touch. But when it's done well, and I think we did it amazingly, if I do say so myself, it is powerful. It is powerful because it's truth.
Well, and I think Leanne, she teed it up so nicely. She didn't go into detail about her abuse. She didn't have to.
No, we don't want to go there.
That wasn't the point. But the fact that, it took 30 years for it to finally come out. And when it did, in inappropriate ways until she went through that difficult counseling for many years.
Yeah. And I know that that's touched other lives in our congregation.
Sure.
And possibly outside of our congregation. I can imagine a scenario where a member who doesn't have experience with that is able to share that sermon, particularly from that series, with somebody and say, look, you're not alone. This is a thing, and you don't have to go through it by yourself.
We also spoke about how worship is about remembering. That is, you and I don't want to tell the hoi polloi that our job is not that hard. That is, our job is to remind them that Jesus died, Jesus rose, and Jesus forgives sins. And we do it every Sunday.
It's basically the same thing.
It's the same thing, but don't tell them that.
But we all need it. Don't we all need to be remembered?
I do.
That's the best part, I think, is that when we forget, God still accepts us and welcomes us back.
Right.
Knowing that we're going to forget and go about our own thing. What's that squirrel or the dog that goes squirrel?
Oh,
what movie is that? What is that?
Up.
Up. Yeah, that's all of us. We're that dog.
You got to be reminded. But the third thing we talked about, and I think I want to go deeper today, is that whole covenant of marriage. Woo. If you remember in that video, Leanne said that her husband was the one.
Yeah.
Now, when she went through her struggle, and I walked with her, Dee could have very easily at any time walked away. I didn't sign up for this.
Right? And how many people in society would have said, and that's right. You didn't sign up for this. You didn't know what you were buying.
Because here's what I want to go a little bit deeper is the difference between biblical love and society love.
Huge difference.
Because when society talks about love, they talk about love as something that you might fall into, like a ditch, or something that you might catch, like COVID-19. They talk about love as something you have no control over. I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I don't care, who knows?
Now, how many premarital counselings have you been to as the counselor, right? And you said, now, every romantic comedy you've ever seen has set you up for the lie.
Right.
The lie is that everything's going to work out beautifully and you're just going to fall happily ever after into the fairy tale.
But the other lie is society has us asking the wrong question. Oh. Society has us asking, does she bring out the best in me? Oh. Does he make me laugh? Does she support me? Does he make me feel secure?
Yeah.
And the idea is, if I'm not feeling it,
if
I'm not feeling it, then I must no longer be in love.
Right.
And I'm almost obligated to myself, society says, to give this one up because I deserve to be loved, don't I?
So this is called expressive individualism.
Let me write that down.
It is the idea of our society today, which is the thing, the image, the idea of who I am on the inside has to be validated on the outside. And if it's not, that is a personal affront. So if you don't get me, then how can you be my spouse?
Right. Right. And it goes, even deeper than that. It is so incredibly selfish.
It is selfish.
It is asking, what am I getting out of it? Do you give me what I need?
So there's this cool little statistic that I like to trounce out that if you cohabitate before you're married, you are more likely to be divorced.
Right.
And the thought process is, oh no, I want to cohabitate. I want to make sure that we work, right? Don't we want to make sure that we work together?
Kick the tires, try it out, test
But
run.
the problem gets at what you brought up in your sermon, right? If I'm going to go and live with this person before I get married, then what happens different after I got married?
Nothing changes, right?
It's always the same. Isn't that what's going on?
But it does.
Man, there's a 4-letter word I want to drop right there, right? Because it's nonsense. Everything changes at that moment of marriage.
Right. And that's what we brought. So in contrast to society's understanding of love, the biblical understanding is nothing to do with a feeling. When Paul says love is not jealous or boastful, not envious or rude, does not rejoice in the wrong, but rejoice in the right, not once does Paul talk about love as those butterflies in our stomach and those sweaty palms when she walks into the room.
Isn't that nonsense? So that's limerence. There's a word for this. It's a psychological state. You and I would call it puppy love. And it lasts anywhere from a year to 18 months. And it's that state where you're just so infatuated and you just can't stop thinking about them. And aren't they the most wonderful thing that happens? And that's the reason people cheat on their spouse.
Because they're not feeling it.
Because they're not feeling the puppy dog and the butterfly and all the other.
So Paul is saying love is patient and kind.
Yes, patient.
Even when I'm feeling impatient and unkind.
Wow,
love is not jealous or boastful, even when I want to tell you how much more I am doing. Love does not rejoice in the wrong, but rejoice in the right, even when I want to tell you I told you so. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, even when I feel like throwing in the towel.
Yeah.
This is why, and I didn't say this on Sunday, but I should have. I stole this from Tim Keller.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And anything from him is brilliant.
you're not going to get an argument from me.
So he is the one I read in his book that this marriage covenant is the closest thing on earth to the covenant that God makes with us in Jesus. Because Jesus doesn't make a covenant with us, God, because we've made Jesus feel good about himself or that we're his body style.
Could you imagine if Jesus
Or
says,
we bring
"Hey,
out the best in him.
you didn't really bring out the best in me anymore, Scott. We're going to get divorced, and I don't love you anymore." Could you imagine if Jesus was so flippant?
No. But what I also like about Jesus in Matthew 19 is that when he quotes, Genesis 2 on the blueprint of marriage, lest we think that marriage is some man-made institution between two warring families or tribes,
Right.
and using women as the bait between that. This is the blueprint of society. And I loved going through that individual. Remember the first thing, a man shall leave his father and mother.
Yeah.
Separation.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a quick story.
Okay.
So when I got married 39 years ago, I'm with my dad. The ceremony is beginning in a little bit, and my dad says to me, Scott, I'm not going to call you for the next 2 years.
Your dad said this.
Yeah. And my dad says goofy things once in a while. I'm thinking, what?
Yeah, that's a weird
What?
thing.
And then he told me why.
Okay.
He and mom got married when they were 19 and 20.
Okay.
They moved into my dad's parents' house,
Okay.
until they could get established and
Well, that's
save
a
money, whatever.
good leg up kind of
Right, leg up.
situation.
My dad was, the youngest of the children and somewhat little spoiled mama's boy.
Uh-huh.
So Dick gets a little cold.
Okay.
He goes to his bed, and my grandmother says to my mom, "Go away. I'll take care of my son."
Oh, that's a flag. Hold on, timeout, penalty on the field.
So my mom goes to my dad and says, "You're going to have to make a choice, Dick. Is it going to be your mom or me?"
Yeah.
Miraculously, my dad makes a recovery the next day. They go out and they find an apartment.
Just like that.
And they live happily ever after.
Hallelujah, it's a miracle.
But you need that healthy separation
Yeah.
from the old family to create room for the new.
Right, something
That's
new.
what he was saying, that goofy thing.
So did he actually do the 2 years?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
But he wanted to represent, at least show you that he cared, give you your space.
We're going to give you space.
Yeah.
Second thing, and shall cling to his wife. The man shall cling to his wife, which really means that this is the most important relationship. You may have a lot of guy friends, a lot of girlfriends, whatever else, but this has to be the primary relationship in your life, that clinging to one another.
And you know what it is? I love this idea of clinging because if you're one flesh, you want to care for yourself. And caring for your spouse
Means caring for yourself.
it's all the same.
Right.
So if you're loving on your spouse, then you are also caring for yourself. And it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, we talk about, how I want to get out of the relationship, right?
Yep.
This modern idea, I'm going to get what I can get. As soon as I can't get it anymore, well, then this relationship must not be for me. But could you imagine if all of a sudden you had, you have a knee, you have a bad knee, right? Knee doesn't work for me anymore.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of the knee. I don't need it anymore. Can
Yeah.
you imagine?
No.
People will be hobbling all over.
So separation, and then there's devotion. I'm going to cling to my wife. And then the third part is they shall become one flesh. And that's
Yeah.
what you're referring to. That's that unity. When one has a victory, the other one cheers. When one has a bad day, the other one weeps. When you see one, you can help but picture the other person. They are of one flesh. And then the very last verse that we don't read in our Puritan wedding ceremonies, remember the last verse in there? We don't read it.
Of Matthew 19?
No, back in Genesis 2. Jesus didn't even quote it.
Oh, no. You know what? You got me. I don't remember.
And they were naked and not ashamed.
Oh, well, that's the best part. Isn't that? I mean, come on, isn't that? That's where you're supposed to be not naked and not ashamed.
Well,
it's in the covenant of a marriage.
And that's the fourth blueprint is intimacy.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that and you have the first three, you're just really good roommates.
Oh, yeah. I've had great roommates, but I don't want to be naked with them.
Can we scratch that from the
No.
from the tape? All right.
This is reality. This is life.
Reality. So the question I want to pose here is, I want to go back to Tim Keller, and he said, this is the closest thing on earth. Marriage is the closest thing on earth to the covenant that God makes with us in Jesus. And how is that so? It's not built on a feeling, as we talked about.
More than a feeling.
Yeah, I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. I'm going to forgive your iniquities and remember your sins no more.
Yeah.
Period. No matter how far you stray or how far you go.
And he calls them adulterers all through the Old Testament. Calls them out and doesn't just say you did wrong. He says, you cheated. You're a cheater.
There's a word that
adulteress.
he uses several times.
For adultery? For the... maybe it's not. It's biblical.
It's biblical. But
Yeah.
so first of all, it is based on the goodness and the power of his word. And the second thing, it is based not on what I can receive out of it, but it's based on the giving.
Yeah.
No greater love has anyone than this.
And to lay down their life.
Well, let's not be so dramatic. I'm probably not going to be asked to lay down my life for my wife, but what will you have to lay down for the sake of your wife?
But it does say that in Ephesians, right?
Yeah.
My wife, when we got married, and we definitely need to wrap this up, my wife, when we got married, wouldn't let us use the husband or wives be subject to your husbands. Because that's all everybody would hear. They'd hear that and they would be done.
Yeah.
But of course it says, wives be subject to your husbands. Husbands be subject to your wives as Christ was to the church. Well, how did Christ become subject to the church?
Drag her into the cave by her hair? No.
No. You're
By
supposed
giving his life.
There it is. That's it. That's how. So husbands are actually supposed to be more submissive, more giving.
There's the offense that we don't hear today. That the offense is for the husband to give his life for the wife.
Yeah, it's not about me and what I can get out of it.
Yeah.
I'm the patriarch. It's about what are we doing together as the couple God made us.
Here's the one difference. The marriage covenant has a definite ending.
Yeah, okay.
until my final breath.
Yeah,
until death do us part. But with the covenant with God, nothing will separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Not height or depth or principalities, not even death.
Not even.
So there's where there is a separation. But other than that, the closest thing on earth to God's love for us found in that marriage covenant.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly.
Thanks for joining us here for this deeper dive. So glad you can join us, and we'll see you next week.